Hello to all my insomniacs and night owls out there. If you're up this late, then you're in the right place. This is Static After Dark. Now we have a terrifying tale, and it's a special episode because it is a Pride episode. So grab your drink, grab your snack, sit down somewhere cozy, and let's get into the story. And remember, you might not want to listen to this one alone.
I never planned on telling this story publicly. Honestly, if it wasn't for what happened afterward, I probably would have convinced myself I was overreacting. This happened a few years ago during Pride. I wasn't completely out yet. Most of my friends knew, but my family didn't, and I was still figuring a lot of things out. I remember spending the afternoon at the parade, walking around, listening to music, people watching. There were thousands of people everywhere. For the first time in a long time, I felt comfortable being myself. At some point, I opened one of those dating apps. You know the kind, like Finder, Snuff, Grindr. One of those apps mostly meant for anonymous hookups. Almost immediately, I got a message. The profile didn't have a face picture, just a shirtless torso. Perfect abs, defined pecs, and one small birthmark above the left nipple. Nothing unusual about that. Half the profiles on those apps are faceless torsos anyway. The conversation was short. And looking back, it was way too short. There was no small talk, no introduction, no exchanging of photos, just directions, an address. The person said they lived near the far end of Boys Town and wanted me to come over. I remember hesitating. Something felt off. But I was young, stupid, and figured I was being paranoid. So I went. The further I walked from the parade, the quieter things became. The crowds faded, the music disappeared. Eventually, I found the address. The building looked abandoned. Not technically abandoned, but close enough. It was one of those old apartment buildings that somehow survives decades longer than it should have. The bricks were stained black. Several windows were boarded up. The front entrance looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. I remember actually checking the address twice because I couldn't believe someone actually lived there. But it matched, so I went inside. The hallway smelled damp, like mildew and old cigarettes. Roaches scattered when I stepped through the doorway. The walls were stained yellow and brown. Some of the ceiling paint had peeled away entirely in patches. I started climbing the stairs, and every step groaned beneath my feet. The banister wobbled if you touched it. Not just a little, enough that I stopped touching it altogether because I thought it might come off in my hand. There were apartment doors along the way. Some had stacks of newspapers piled in front of them, others had garbage bags still sitting outside. A few had strange sounds coming from behind them, shouting, crying, mumbling, the kind of noises that make you walk a little faster. By the time I reached the 4th floor, I was already thinking about leaving. I told myself I was just being judgmental. Maybe the building looked rough, but plenty of people lived in rough buildings. Then the final message appeared on my phone. Apartment 4C. Doors unlocked. Back bedroom. Come in. That was it. No greeting, no smiley face, nothing. Just instructions. I found the apartment, and the hallway was empty. Silent. The door stood in front of me, and I remember staring at it. Something deep in my gut was screaming at me to leave, but I ignored it. I reached for the handle, and before I could open it, the door shifted. Just slightly. Maybe an inch, maybe less. Like someone on the other side had moved it accidentally. The gap that opened was tiny, but it was enough. The smell hit me instantly. I can't properly describe it. I've tried. It wasn't garbage, it wasn't sewage, it wasn't spoiled food. It was worse. Much worse. Imagine trash left baking in the summer heat for weeks. Then make it sweeter somehow. Sickeningly sweet. Rotting. Thick. The kind of smell you don't just smell. You feel it. My eyes started watering immediately, and my stomach lurched. I actually gagged. And that's when every alarm bell in my head started screaming. I didn't knock. I didn't call out. And I didn't check inside. I turned around and ran. I ran down 4 flights of stairs. I ran through the lobby. I ran out the front door. And I kept running. I didn't stop until I was back among the crowds from the parade. back where there were people, back where there was noise, back where there were witnesses. For a while, I convinced myself I was being ridiculous. Maybe somebody forgot to take out the trash, maybe there was a dead animal somewhere, maybe the building's plumbing was backed up. I spent days trying to rationalize it. Then a few mornings later, I was sitting at home eating cereal when the news came on. At first, I wasn't paying attention, just background noise. Then I heard the reporter mention a serial killer. My eyes drifted towards the television. Police were escorting a man into a squad car. Tall, lanky, pale, stringy hair, tiny eyes, completely expressionless. The reporter called him something dramatic, the hookup killer, the day nap killer, something along those lines. I don't remember the exact name. What I do remember is hearing that he'd allegedly used anonymous dating apps to lure victims to locations throughout the city. Several missing persons cases had suddenly been connected. The address appeared on screen. My stomach dropped. It was the same address. Then they showed the building. The exact building. The exact entrance. The exact stairwell. I remember nearly dropping my bowl. Then they showed the apartment door. Apartment 4C. The same apartment. I sat there frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. The reporter started discussing the victims. Photographs appeared on the screen. Missing person photos, family photos, pictures pulled from social media. Then one image appeared. A group photo. 3 young men smiling at the camera. One stood in the middle with his arms around the others. He looked happy, confident, the kind of guy who could have been a model. And then I noticed something. He wasn't wearing a shirt. Perfect abs, defined pecs, and a small birthmark above his left nipple. Exactly where I'd seen it before. The photo stayed on the screen for maybe 3 seconds, but that was enough. I recognized it immediately. The profile picture, the torso, the birthmark, the account that had messaged me. The person I thought I'd been meeting wasn't the killer. It was one of the victims. A victim whose profile was still being used after he disappeared. I remember feeling ice cold all over. Suddenly, another possibility entered my mind, one that still terrifies me. What if the messages had only been sent to get me inside? And what if the person who cracked the apartment door open was standing right on the other side waiting for me to come in? I still think about that sometimes, and how close I came. About how one bad decision almost led me through that doorway. Most of all, I think about the smell. Because years later, whenever I catch even the faintest hint of something rotten in the summer heat, for a split second, I'm back on the 4th floor, standing outside apartment 4C. One hand on the handle, and one step away from finding out what was waiting inside. Okay, and that is why we don't go off just a torso pic anymore. I hope you guys have an amazing Pride. Just remember to be safe. If you have a terrifying tale that you would love to share, please feel free to reach out. Just don't be surprised if something answers back. My name is Sam. I was your host for this evening, and this was Static After Dark. Stay tuned for our next episode next week because we post every Friday. All right, you guys have a great rest of your night. Love ya. Bye. Whoosh.